I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Going to give the oath of office.
Please raise your right hand. I do hereby solemnly swear or affirm
I do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
of the State of New York
of the State of New York
as interim superintendent of schools
as interim superintendent of schools
of the City School District
of the City School District
of the City of Beacon,
of the City of Beacon,
County of Dutchess,
County of Dutchess,
and State of New York.
and State of New York. Thank you.
Need you to sign
Roll call, please.
Tracy Antelek Everett. Here. Kenny Gadsden.
Excused.
Christine Galba.
Here.
Frank Garna.
Here.
Jose Munoz.
Absent.
Georgia Patchen.
Excused.
Anthony White.
Present.
Bill Zoff.
Here.
Melissa Thompson.
Here. Dr. Walkley, would you review the fire exits?
I will. The fire exits are behind you, and in case of fire, feel free to follow south.
Okay. I'd like to request a moment of silence for Mr. Vincent Jim Fredericks, former mayor of the City of Beacon and retired superintendent of buildings and grounds for the Beacon City School District. Please stand. Thank you. Dr. Walkley, would you like to introduce our workshop tonight?
I would. We have 3 presentations, and our first presentation is by Anne Marie Corderoni, and she's going to be talking to us about the tax form.
Thank you. Good evening. On tonight's agenda, the board will be voting on the tax warrant, which is the first step in us creating the tax bills that go out at the beginning of September. So every year we just give you a little presentation of exactly where we are and what people can expect to see when their tax bill arrive in the mail. So we always start off with what's new. The first bullet isn't really new, but it is the 3rd year of our tax cap. So we survived another budget process with the tax cap. The new part of it is the property tax freeze, and what that means is that the taxpayers will be receiving a rebate check, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes just to kind of see what you can expect in the next month or so. Just some highlights from where we were during the budget process. Our budget levy increase was 2.29%, which was at the cap, which is an important part when we talk about the property tax freeze in a few minutes. And the additional increase, this year we are financing the bus proposition. We talked about that during the budget presentation. We'll increase the levy of another 0.27%. Again, a reminder, these are all highlights that we talked about during the budget process, that we were able to use $3.5 million of excess fund balance in reserve. And we are also using, again, the $275,000 of the tax reduction reserve. And as you remember, the tax reduction reserve was set up when we sold Old Beacon High School. We have 10 years to use that, and it must be used to reduce current tax levies. So the first few years we were not, we really didn't need to use any amount. So this is the second year we will be using part of the reserve. We still have half of the $1 million reserve left for future years. Just some highlights on the tax rate and the calculation. The equalization rates remain at 100%, and that's been like that for at least 5 or 6 years since we did the revaluation across Dutchess County. The taxable assessed values for homestead properties in Beacon and Fishkill increased. Homestead means the individual taxpayers. Non-homestead means the businesses. So that we did see an increase in the taxable assessed values, which is interesting because we haven't seen that. They either remained flat or they have decreased after the revaluation. We had put a phone call into Fishkill and Beacon, and we had found out there is some building going on there in the homestead area, which has increased the assessment. That kind of helps out with the rest of the taxpayers because it gives us a bigger base to actually spread the levy over. The tax OCRs always have an impact on the taxable assessed values. We've seen a decrease in those asking for reductions in their assessment. The highest amount we saw was in 2006-07 when we did the revaluation, so they have progressively decreased each year. And again, the STAR exemptions have decreased, but that's been since it's been instituted. There's a progression every year of decrease. So this is a chart just to give you an idea about the changes in assessment. Again, you'll notice Beacon and Fishkill did go up in the homestead, and Wappingers did decrease a little bit. And again, the non-homestead assessments, which are the businesses within the 3 municipalities, have decreased. That's pretty similar to what's gone on the last couple of years. Again, the equalization rates are all at 100%, so it makes the calculation a little bit easier. And these are the tax rates for 14-15, a comparison of what you will see. That's $15.91 per 1,000 of assessed value. So it's about a 40% increase for Beacon and a little bit higher Fishkill and Wappingers. And this is on homestead, so this is what the taxpayers will see on their tax bill. And this chart just basically shows the progression of the STAR exemption. So what happens when the STAR exemption decreases? That means you get less of a credit, and it means that your taxes could go up a little bit. And it's hard to understand that when trying to calculate the bill. The taxpayers always have a harder time understanding that. So these 3 slides I do during the budget presentation, but then I like to do them again now to actually reflect what we're going to see when the tax bills come out. So for the city of Beacon, again, we use the same median assessed value of $290,500 with the new STAR exemption. The increase will be $131 per year, or $10.92 per month. That was exactly what we said during the budget process. The reason that came out that way was the increase in the assessments in Beacon. In the town of Fishkill, the assessment was $353,500 for an average home with STAR is $160 per year, or $13.33 per month. And in Wappingers, their median assessed value home is $350,500 with the STARs $192 or $16 per month. That's a little bit higher, just a teeny bit higher, because their assessments had fallen a little bit in Wappingers. So the property tax freeze credit. So while I was finalizing the PowerPoint today, I noticed we get a listserv of articles, and there was an article in LOHUD today about Governor Cuomo and the property tax freeze, which I can put on the website, but I did give a copy to the board for them to see. So basically, this is something new. It was included in the 2015 budget that the governor and the legislative passed. And they're trying to make taxpayers whole. So as long as the school district stays within the levy cap, which Beacon did, the taxpayers will receive a check, probably the end of September, the beginning of October. To be eligible for this property tax freeze credit or check, your property must meet the requirements of the STAR exemption, which basically means it must be your primary residence. So if you own more than one home and you don't live in you only can get it on the one property, but it must be your primary residence. The credit is equal to the greater of the actual increase in the tax bill, so it will be a comparison of last year to this year, or the previous year's tax bill multiplied by 1.46%. So since our levy is more than 1.46%, it would be the difference in the 2 tax bills. What I did read was that if any taxpayer didn't understand or or thought they should get more, that the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance was going to entertain those kind of inquiries once the checks do go out. We've gotten rebate checks before, so it's similar to that, so we'll go to an address. But it's nothing that the school district isn't going to generate the check. It's going to come from New York State Tax and Finance. The district did have to complete a form, and we did have to prove that we stayed within the tax cap, which has all been filed and done. So overall, in the whole New York State, I think there was less than 1% of districts that actually went over the cap. So everybody's trying to stay within that so that taxpayers will receive the credit check. And again, and you should be receiving it. I put the fall on this, but the article said closer to the end of September, beginning of October. And that's it. Does the board have any questions about the tax rates or the warrant? No? Okay, thank you.
I'd like to thank Anne Marie because she did this work, is usually due a month from now, and Anne Marie finished a month early. And I also have to say that in the transition at the central office, Anne Marie has been integral in really helping out and picking up all kinds of extra work. So not only did she get it in early, she's been doing extra work, and I thank you very much for that.
No.
The next presenter is me, filling in for the assistant superintendent.
Censures, that's what you need tonight?
Yes. I have been in Beacon twice before, and every time I've been here I talk about accountability. And the reason that I talk about accountability is because of the importance that the state places on our accountability measures. We are looked at across the state because of our accountability measures, and we receive funding or don't receive funding because of the improvements that we make or don't make. And so it's really critical for us to know where we stand with our accountability measures. And I'd like to call this on the road to continuous improvement. First, I want to talk about the context of accountability measures. Oh, go back. It's got a little timer in here, sorry. The context of our context lens is really, we're looking at a very minute piece of what happens in a school district during a school year. Our accountability, much of our accountability is based, as you know, on state testing. State testing happens at grades 3 through 8 in the spring, and in January, June, and August for regents. And so when we look at the percentage of time that is spent on testing, which is either one day or over a few days, it's very small based upon the learning that happens throughout the school year. So I always want to keep it in perspective that we're looking at one day, and so many decisions are based on one day in a child's life. You know, imagine getting up, it's the day that you have a stomach ache or you don't feel good, you didn't get to bed early last night and you've got to go to work. And all of your accountability is based on that one day. That's the context that we look at accountability measures. And really right now what I see the state doing, I call it the PhD of accountability, which is piling it higher and deeper. In other words, we have already been accountable over the last 10 to 15 years in education, and as the accountability raises and raises, nothing is taken away. And so it sort of feels like this, if you're an educator, that more and more weight is placed upon the shoulders of the educators because of the accountability. Some of you have seen these slides, but I think they're worth repeating, and also I've added some new pieces to it. I'm really looking at the changing accountability of educators. Back in 1950, you know, there were three main goals in school, three main things that were measured. First, do your buses, you know, arrive and leave on time? Do they pick up all the kids? So buses was a big measure. as well as the boilers. If the boiler doesn't work, you can't come to school. And so we wanted to have the boilers working 100% of the time, and do you have the right books? That was 1950. Let's fast forward to the late 70s and the 80s. And you can see that the buses, boilers, and books are still important because they're part of our educational process, but look what we PhD'd at that time. This is really the beginning of accountability, where we began to add assessments and state reporting, public reporting of state results, along with the discipline, lunch forms, graduation rates, adding in educating all students to certain levels, etc. Then we get into the years in the 2000 early years. And we've added in higher accountability through data, looking at much more data, having benchmarks for grades for students, report cards reported in the paper. We had to have data teams and all kinds of reports around data. And finally now, look what we've added to the plate. Nothing has been taken off. We just keep piling it higher and deeper. So now we have Common Core assessments. We have to ensure involvement by parents. We have new curriculum. Looking at school choice. We have plans we have to do. And this is just scraping the surface. So as we go forward in education, more and more is put on the plate. Nothing's taken off. And let's remember, as Anne Marie just reminded us, we've added in a tax cap. So the solution to the problem of more and more and more accountability can't be more and more staffing. That we can't solve it in that way. So there's a lot of challenges in education right now. Probably the most challenging time any person in education has seen. I'm going to talk about our accountability. I have some information to share with you with the latest accountability that is posted on the New York State website. There are 4 terms that I'm going to talk about. The performance, the PI, because everything from the state is alphabet soup. PI stands for Performance Index. This represents the score that Beacon students achieved on state assessments. EAMO stands for Effective Annual Measurable Objective, and that's just a fancy way to say that's the state target score. That's the target that the state sets for our students and groups of our students. Safe harbor is a special term, and I like to call it the second chance. If we meet certain guidelines, such as consistently testing 95% of our students, and there's only one subgroup that missed the effective annual measurable objective, then we are eligible for usually a little bit lower target. If we don't test 95% of our students and meet the other criteria, then we can't use that lower target. And that's why student attendance is so important during the testing time, and students participating in the testing is so important for us to keep achieving that 95% of students tested. The last accountability term that I'm going to refer to is AYP, which is Adequate Yearly Progress. And that is a statistical number that is demonstrated through state testing. If our performance index, or the number, the score that the Beacon students achieved on state assessments, is equal to or greater than the effective annual measurable objective, which is the state target, or the safe harbor target, then, and we're eligible for safe harbor, then the district or the school achieves AYP, Annual Yearly Progress. And that is what we want to do. That's the good news. It's the good news when you get your annual yearly progress. If the performance index is less than the effective annual measurable objective or a safe harbor if you're eligible for it, then the district or school does not achieve AYP. And that's of concern for us because, as I said earlier, we are our status of our school and our district is based on that achieving AYP, and funding is based on it as well. 3 years ago, our high school, middle school, and our district was placed on a list, a status list called Focus Schools and a Focus District. And that's because we were not making or meeting enough AYP targets. So I want to share with you this evening, by switching this over, I want to share with you the latest AYP information on the state website that is posted. And what I want you to be aware of is this is not the year we just completed. It's the prior year. It's when I was here last. When I was here last, that was 2012-13, and this is the results. I want to remind you what was happening that year. That was the first year of the Regents Reform Agenda. We were implementing the APPR and many other state mandates. It is also the year that state testing began to change. The state told us that the testing would be more rigorous, more challenging for students across the state, and the results of that were true. What we saw across the state was a dip in student performance because of the changing of the level or standard of what was good on an assessment. So there's some things in this data that are going to challenge us, and like everything, there's some really good news here. So I want to share with you all of our AYP, and I can guarantee you that the teachers will be anxious to look at our challenges and move forward in the spirit of continuous improvement. I'm going to start at the secondary level where the assessment in English language arts changed. And the last time I was here, I actually spoke to you, the board, and the audience about the changes in ELA, particularly in the literacy changes. At that time, the books that were recommended for ninth graders were books in many school districts, including Beacon, that we used at 12th grade. So the books from 12th grade, the literacy books, moved down to 9th grade. And I use the term, if 6 turned out to be 9, which is a song by Jimi Hendrix, because the 9th grade level of literacy moved down to 6th grade. So very challenging test at that time. What we're going to look at is the AYP, the performance index, and the effective annual measurable objective. It's going to come out a little bit small, but if you'd like to see this, you can go to the New York State Education website, and you can call this up and take a look, a better look at it. So what you're seeing here is, first at the top, left-hand side, you've seen the student groups that were being measured. It always starts with all students, and then we're looking at our subgroups. As you can see, or maybe you can't see, but the first is all students, and the second is American Indian and Alaskan Natives. And you see that there are dashes there. That's because we do not have more 30 or more students in that subgroup. So the state does not report the results of that subgroup because the sample size is statistically too small to do so. you are looking at district data, and you might think, well, gee, we only have one high school here, so this must be all of our students. But actually, it's more than the students who go to the high school. This includes any students that have been placed out of the district for a variety of special reasons. So this sample size is just a little bit bigger. We don't have many students out of the district. It's just a little bit bigger than high school. After the column of student groups, the next column is a check for did that group make AYP. Now, honestly, I have to tell you, when I look at this information, that's the column I look at first. But to show you where that information comes from, it comes from right here. Here's the performance index, or the score that we received, all of our students. And then here's the effective annual measurable objective. That was the target from the state. And then the safe harbor, which again is just a little bit lower or equal to the EAMO. And if you look back now to the left-hand column that said made AYP, what we want to see I've highlighted in yellow. I've highlighted it because that's what we want to see, a check mark, because that means yes. And X means no. We did not make AYP, and you can look back at the numbers and confirm that. So the really exciting news here is that our students with disabilities made AYP in English Language Arts for the high school. The other subgroups, there were no other subgroups that made AYP. I will remind you that was the first year of a new assessment. So that's the data that challenges us. And I know that I will be working with the high school English Language Arts as well as the high school team, and we will have a plan in place to move forward. What we also don't know yet is how they performed this year. So that's an unknown right now. Now I want to show you the math at the secondary level, same year, same subgroups. And now we again see some really exciting news. And that exciting news is every subgroup at the secondary level at the high school made AYP. This is the state, when we're looking at the district data, the state combines the elementary and middle school data together in one report. So we're looking at elementary, middle school data for English Language Arts. And again, the good news, the exciting news is that every subgroup made AYP. And finally, these are the math results at the district level. And again, at the district level, which is the largest number of students, we see that every subgroup made AYP. And so I was here that year, and I need to thank the administrative team and the teachers who worked so hard that year to make AYP and to continuously improve what's happening in the school district. And I know the spirit of those teachers and administrators are going to continue on as we work together this year, and as we look to continuously improve those results even higher. So thank you to those people. That concludes my report, except that we have some really, really exciting news. And I'm going to call up Mr. Soltish, and he's going to give us a very brief report about the work that his team at the middle school and the teachers, both teachers and his other administrators at the middle school, have accomplished. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. As you've seen up there, I have some good news that I'd like to share with everyone. Through the hard work of the students and staff of Roundabout Middle School, we have made 2 years of improvement. We were invited by the state to petition to have Roundabout Middle School removed from the focus list. We have filed a petition and are hopeful to hear back from the state soon. So I'd like to share that with everyone. We are hopeful because we were invited by them that we will be removed from the focus list.
And that concludes our report.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, there is no more. Nope, there isn't, I'm sorry. It's on the other report.
Okay. May I have a motion for executive session?
Motion to adjourn to executive session to review the employment history of a particular individual, and the board will return as soon as possible.
Second.